thank you everybody for attending our presentation here at Access Lab. My name is John Seguin. I'm the COO and co-founder at Third Iron, and with me I have Alan Fricker, Knowledge and Library Hub Manager, Directorate of Innovation, Transformation and Digital at Health Education England. The topic that we're going to be talking about is article level intelligence, better open access discovery and linking in library systems. One of the main challenges that we see in linking today is how to handle hybrid journals properly. Hybrid journal, for the uninformed, is a subscription journal in which only some articles are open access. This is in stark contrast to, say, a gold open access journal, where all the articles are open in all those titles, or dealing with something like a bronze open access journal, where some of the articles are open access after maybe a given period, an embargo period, or maybe a fixed point in time. Both gold and bronze journals are handled pretty well by current link resolver technology because they deal with an entire journal or with a date range that has to be monitored for that journal when you're linking out. Hybrid journals, though, create a unique problem because you really need article level intelligence to understand what is available within those titles. Different articles can be open access within a hybrid journal, either because the publisher has decided to make something free for a limited time and for promotional reason or other things, and they can change that back at some point in the future. Or more commonly, you have article processing charges where an individual researcher has paid the publisher to make that article open access. In either case, it's quite challenging for link resolvers without article level intelligence to be able to properly link to these materials in an accurate way. Here's kind of an example of how that usually plays out. With hybrid journals, you may have thousands and thousands of these within a library's collection, but a library is often reticent to include those if they don't have an existing subscription to the title in its entirety. And that's because, as you'll see, link resolvers are looking at things at that title level or date-based sort of range. So if you have open access articles within these hybrid journals, those entire journals may be indexed in common databases like PubMed or Web of Science or Scopus. And so these articles may come up in a user's search. We typically use link resolvers then to try to resolve to full text. But the link resolver is going to be looking at what the library has told it has access to. And so the library is then faced with a difficult choice. If they include these hybrid journals that they do not have full access to, they are doing so to create pathways to that content that is open access within those journals, but they're also setting users up for failure as well, because you're linking out to articles that you know you don't have access to, which results in paywalls and dead ends and confusing situations for users. So if I don't include this, I might also then be routed to an interlibrary loan form. Very commonly, if a link resolver doesn't think you have entitlements to something. But then, of course, this actually is an unnecessary ILL request. And so it creates a bunch of extra churn in the library as well, where the ILL staff looks up the article only to find out at the publisher site, they can download it immediately. So it would have been a lot better, of course, if the user was linked through correctly to that material to prevent that extra ILL churn, delay in access for the actual researcher, and all this process just turns into frustrated users and library staff. So hybrid opportunity does require action. It requires that there exists an accurate knowledge of open access availability and the creation of that sort of knowledge base. It also requires that libraries use article level linking technology in the library services so that it's part of the natural linking flow for researchers. And then finally, we should be expanding Discovery Central indices with accurate information on OA availability and linking. That's a great opportunity, of course, because it can literally create an expanded scope for that central index to the tune of millions of articles that are actually available in these hybrid journals that are not currently being seen. The current state of open access linking today is that different sources of open access information use different methodologies. You've got like the DOAJ, which is doing an editorial level monitoring of gold open access journals, which is relatively easy for link resolvers to ingest and follow links to. Then you've got projects like Impact Stories on Paywall, as well as Core, where they're out harvesting open access content through lots of different crawling methodologies, trying to understand what is open and what is not. There's varying abilities and speed that these systems have, as well as different ways that they try to correct for errors, meaning feedback from end users and libraries, and their ability to do that at a rapid pace. The results for linking is that you can get into situations where you have missing open access articles. If their crawlers or harvesters do not identify something, it's simply not known by the system, and so it's a missed opportunity. You can also have situations where the crawler has a mistake in it, or the publisher has changed their pages in such a way where a mistake is the result of that, and you get incorrect links. So it has actually nothing to do with the article that you're trying to link to. You could also misidentify articles as open access. When those situations change or there's a mistake in the crawling engine, you link through and you still get a paywall because it was incorrect data. And then finally, there can be unclear versioning. These systems do look a lot at all types of open access material, not just the version of record. So you can very easily have a user linking out to something they think is the open access version of an article, but it's actually the submitted manuscript in a repository before peer review, before editorial control, before the user has before the author has an ability to go in and correct those mistakes. And as information professionals, we may be very familiar with these different versions and versioning and language, but especially as we're putting these systems in front of the youngest scholars, the brand new college students and so on, a lot of that is completely unknown to them. So it can quite seem like we're treating those as equivalents when they're really not. So there's a strong need, I think, for library-centric OA linking, tools that can help us as libraries provide the best service for our users. And I think the combination of things needed is a blending of open access data sources. So finding the best of different projects going on, exercising some editorial control on that, and building additional tooling to provide the best possible knowledge source of this open access information. Operational control, so that there's plenty of tools for quickly reacting to any issues that may be found and tweaking methodologies at a rapid pace. And then, of course, staying current. There's thousands of new research articles published every single day, but it's not just figuring out the status of those materials, it's also retroactively looking back at older materials to see if those have changed over time and making sure to react and respond to those at a regular clip. At Third Iron, we have a libkey system which has this article level intelligence, which combines a combination of intelligence data, both looking at article metadata, library entitlements, what do they subscribe to, how do you authenticate, including systems like Open Athens, enhanced open access availability, as we were just discussing, and aggregator status, as well as editorial status, retraction status, for example, or expressions of concern. And then we feed that into our AI-based source selection, where there's a nice little waterfall of decision-making to say, well, here's the open access version of record. Does that exist? Let's go there first. Well, okay, that doesn't exist. How about a subscribed version from the publisher? Is that part of the library entitlements? And all of this then results in a very simplistic experience for the user, which we see as the future of linking. This idea of saying, here's a piece of content that the researcher found in some point of discovery, and they want the full text. That's it. Let's do all of those things that was on the previous slide in 1/10 of a second and make sure that the user is then getting to content and keeping their focus on the research and the content, not on kind of the messy library bits of authentication and linking and entitlements and library systems. And we think that ultimately results in better scholarship. The result of doing this is that you can effectively expand your collections with accurate knowledge of available content in these journals. So you are very confidently adding these millions of hybrid open access articles to your linking resolution scheme. You also connect more users with more available full text and reduce those unnecessary interlibrary loan requests, overall resulting both in happier users and happier library staff. The libkey tools from Third Iron work in a variety of different contexts, including databases, discovery systems, open web searching, ILL, bento systems, systematic review, and many more. And in all these use cases, the same simplified linking scheme is available to users, ensuring this consistent result. I want to hand it over now to Alan to talk about a case study with NHS England for implementing some of these technologies and tools. Alan?
Thank you, John. Yes, so I'm here and happy to be able to illustrate some of the ways that we've been working with Third Iron to improve the experience for our users right across the NHS in England. Um, for background, the Knowledge and Library Hub is an implementation of a discovery tool where there's a consistent brand right across the NHS in England, but with variations for the many different organizations. Currently, we have in excess of 200 slightly different versions of the hub, reflecting the slightly different positions of the services that work with NHS organizations. But what they see as users is a common infrastructure, and LibKey is an important part of that and Third Iron products in terms of giving people the same consistent experience where they go. That consistent experience that John touched on when he was talking about cutting through some of the complexity about accessing full text is actually one of the two critical elements that we see here in terms of our implementation. We know that it's confusing for users when they're confronted by different authentication routes, where they're not too sure which password they need to use in which box, which institutional name they might need to flag on this particular occasion. All of that variation is smoothed away where they can just click on a button that says get PDF. If necessary, it then takes them past the simple username and password Open Athens authentication route and then straight to that article. So it's very much the kind of experience that people hope for when they click a link and try to access an article. The other thing is that we have a kind of very varying position. If you're working in the NHS, you're most often confronted with a narrower range of resources than you might experience if you were perhaps working with a large academic library service. And there are very broad needs in the NHS. Nearly all of the professions that you could care to think about, and a few more are represented in our workforce. And we're trying to meet the needs of all of those different kinds of users for very different materials. And through expanding with bringing that open access content into the light, we're really making a huge difference to what people see. We'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. And we've been really keen. We've done work with our discovery tool to embed the best possible linking experience. So very much a picture where they can just click and go either to browse the journal or directly to that article in such a way that they see that information immediately. Often in link resolver environments, you might have to call the link resolver to tell you whether you have something or not. So we've moved it in the direction of people seeing that straight away. So it really emphasizes how do we make the life of the user simpler. And as a result, we're trying to embed that wherever we can. Next slide, please, John. So one of the things that we've really been pleased to do is to use the Nomad browser plugin, which is part of this set of resources. It builds on the data that our libraries are already providing to their link resolver systems. And it's installed as a plugin in such a way that actually we go from talking about the library without walls to actually putting the library directly into where the user is. So the library in the life of the user, as it's sometimes talked about. And where we are seeing this, getting this rolled out, we're seeing enormous differences in terms of usage. What happens is people are out on the web, they might be on PubMed, and it will populate, if they have it installed, all of the links live into their results list. So they don't have to think about which version of PubMed they're using, they don't have to follow a special link, they just need to have Nomad installed, and they're getting that information both about open access titles, but also about the subscribed content all at the same time. So this makes a huge difference to the visibility of our materials, and it also emphasizes for people all of the other things that are available open access. We're seeing in some cases rises in excess of 100% on very short turnarounds as people start using this tool. The other thing that it does do is on all of the sites where it's activated, which is lots of publisher sites, for example, if we don't have access through subscription or open access, it also offers a link that brings them back into our world and pulls them into the requesting system that we have built into our discovery tool. So we're making it easy for those people to go, have I got it already? No. Am I prepared to wait briefly while the library gets hold of it? Sure, push the button and it does all of that really smoothly. Importantly for us in the NHS and in terms of authentication, Nomad isn't storing any passwords, and we've been able to secure group deployments in what are very privacy cautious IT environments, clearly with patient identifiable data in place. There are lots of measures that IT departments need to be satisfied on, and we've been able to do that with Nomad. So we're really able to make the best for our users. Next slide. And I said that we've seen a difference with this, so I mentioned already the kind of high levels of usage that it's driving, but we're also actually able to see the impact that open access makes within that. Third Eye are able to provide us with details of the extent to which requests are being satisfied from open access sources. And on our kind of national portal, so for people who are not logged in and looking in across the smaller collection in some ways that we have for everybody, we see very high levels, close to 80% of all of the kind of article requests that are satisfied on that portal are coming through open access. So that's a real difference. If that wasn't there, they would be seeing hugely less content. When we look at some of the very busy discovery tools and hubs, actually what we're seeing there is that it might be around 45% of the usage in those busy large NHS organisations is being supplied from open access. And that's pretty much across the board, and it tends to average out in that way. There are some outliers. It tends to reflect places where they are particularly strong on certain kinds of promotion, actually using a different third-hand tool called Browsing. And what we're increasingly seeing is the potential is there because we can see which titles are being served, lots of open access content, that we might consider that in our kind of future procurement. So to what extent actually can we meet most of the needs for this particular title from within open access? And that might help us drive some decisions later. Next slide, John. And the final element here is actually then what we can do with the data that we have around collections. So we've been working with Third Eye to create something called InkDocs, which is going to be soon to launch, hopefully, a requesting service that allows us to take full advantage of NHS procurement. So across the libraries working with the NHS with appropriate licensing, we're able to share electronic resources for our users. And the InkDocs system effectively allows a highly streamlined and tailored sharing of those collections. So people can make a request and rapidly find somewhere that can source it, and they receive a request which brings them simply and quickly to the article that's required. Importantly, part of that process is a check to see whether the journal article is already available in their collection. And by their collection here, we are including that bigger picture, so subscribed content, but also the open access. So that's going to prevent us seeing requests made for articles that actually people already have access to, even if they hadn't necessarily known it when they asked the library for it. So we're picking off those things, supplying them straight away, rather than waiting while it has to go through a request, which is all time and cost that we don't need to make. And again, there's really good potential here around doing some collective work around what we need to buy. So if we see that there are perhaps certain titles where many libraries are requesting it and not many libraries have that access, actually maybe we need to buy some more copies to spread the burden of supply, and also make sure those libraries that are particularly requesting it actually have the immediate access that our users would prefer in a kind of like money no object world. And we can also consider actually sometimes, have we got too many copies of something? So this is something that we're looking forward to doing as the product develops. But all of that stuff is enabled both by having that smooth linking experience to our subscribed collections, and also that picture and vision of what's available to us on the wider open web. So thank you, John.
Thank you, Alan. We really appreciate being invited here to speak. And thank you, Alan, for your time and contributions to this presentation. Because this is a recorded session, we're not available to answer questions live, of course. But on this screen, you can see both Alan and my emails. So certainly, if you have any questions about anything that Alan or I talked about, please feel free to reach out to us at any time, and we're happy to get back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.